Hi everyone, and welcome to day one of the Basics to Brilliance DSAT course that I've started. So before I move into anything, DSAT stands for the Digitalized SAT Test, which is usually taken by most people who want to apply to some US universities. And we have 4 different modules, 2 for English and 2 for mathematics. And so this course will simply be following the reading and writing section, how to get a 700 plus, or if not, just improve your score through some basic tips. So this is our first section of this course. So we're going to dive right in and look at some practice questions. These are just taken from all sorts of different skills. You can test yourself, you can see if you're able to answer the questions, and then I will go over them. So our first question is a notes question, and I'm going to give you guys around 2 or 3 minutes just to quickly read it and quickly come up with an answer. And then we'll go over it together. So you can pause the video. Okay, so in this notes question, one thing to remember is you always do not need to read the notes. I've never seen a question where you actually need to read the notes. If you just simply focus on the question and try to get the most accurate answer, you will end up with the correct answer. So here they're asking, the student wants to describe the rocking chair to an audience unfamiliar with Sam Malouf. Which choice most effectively uses the relevant information from the notes to accomplish this goal? So here we know the 2 things we really need is to mention the rocking chair, and also it says the audience doesn't know who this person, Sam Malouf, is. So we're looking for a description of Sam Malouf before providing his name. So option A already seems like a really good option because it says, with its sleek, contoured armrest and seat, the walnut rocking chair in Boston's Museum of Fine Arts is just one piece of furniture created by American woodworker Sam Malouf. So they really mentioned the rocking chair, and they also mentioned that Sam Malouf is an American woodworker. So both of these are clearly stated. Whereas, for example, in B, they quickly mentioned Sam Malouf without explaining who he is. In C, they do say that he's a furniture designer, but there's no mention of the rocking chair. In D, we have mention of the rocking chair, but there's no mention of Sam Malouf. So the only option that really combines everything is option A. So we can immediately pick that and see I didn't even have to read on any of the notes, and that can save you time. So our next 2 questions are going to be modifier questions. These questions are extremely simple to answer once you understand the concept, very simple to gain marks. So just pause the video and come up with an answer. Okay, so this question says, though they seem like an unusual way to extinguish a fire, engineering students are designing low-frequency sound wave devices to put out flames. And they're asking us, does this sentence make sense in the context that it's put in right now? And clearly it does not, because right now what we see is that the engineering students are the ones that actually extinguish a fire, because in the first half of the sentence it says, though they seem like an unusual way to extinguish a fire, and then right after it says engineering students. And of course, engineering students cannot be used to extinguish a fire. That does not make sense. So we're looking for a word that comes after the comma that will make sense from what comes before, if that makes sense. So like, what is actually being used to extinguish the fire? What is the they in this context? And the only thing that makes sense would be option C, low frequency sound wave devices. Because engineering students cannot be used, flames cannot be used to extinguish a fire, and it's not no change because again, the first context does not make sense. So you really have to pay attention to what comes before the comma. What is the pronoun they? And then you want to see what makes sense to come right after the comma, if that makes sense. So it's really just reading the question properly and seeing with your common sense what makes the most sense. And it should be quite easy from there. So it's low-frequency sound wave devices designed by engineering students are being used to put out flames. That makes the most sense in this context. All right, so we're on to our next modifier question now. The question says, having become the first person to complete the 1500-meter freestyle swim at age 100, a smile was worn by Mieko Nagaoka. And it's asking, is the current part after the comma, does that make sense? Or if not, what is the option? So I'm going to ask you guys to pause the video quickly, come up with your own answer. Okay, so as we saw in the previous video, the first thing you want to do is read what comes before the comma. Having become the first person to complete the 1500-meter freestyle swim at age 100. And then you want to think, what is this first part talking about? It's talking about a person, so it's probably asking for a name. But then immediately we see that what comes after is a smile, which is not correct because it's not the smile that completed the 1500-meter freestyle swim. It's a person. It's Mieko Nagaoka. So we're looking for an option where Mieko Nagaoka comes right before the comma to make this sentence as clear as possible, which is again option C. So as you can see, the only thing you have to do is read what comes before the comma, try to contextualize it, try to see what is it describing, and then you want the part right after the comma to quickly explain exactly what the part before the comma was. So the final question we're going to be looking at for this basic little teaser into the course is transitions questions, which you'll see very, very often in the test. It's very easy to answer once again you understand how to answer these questions. So please pause the video, come up with your own answer, and then we'll go through it. So here the paragraph says, the Babylonian king Hammurabi achieved much during his 40-year reign. He conquered all of Mesopotamia and built Babylon into one of the most powerful cities of the ancient world. Today blank, he is mainly remembered for a code of laws inscribed on a 7-foot tall block of stone, the Code of Hammurabi. So I very, very strongly suggest not to really look at the answers before, but come up with your own answer before moving on to the answer choices, because usually the answer choices are designed in a way to trick you. So when you have your own word, it's very difficult to pick the wrong answer. So here, again, like we did before, you want to look at what comes before the dash, what comes after, and then try to make a good transition. So here we clearly find out that the king has achieved a lot. There's a lot of mentions of the different things that he's done. But then after the dash, it says that he's actually not remembered for any of those things that were mentioned previously, but rather for something different. So we clearly know that this transition has to imply something different. So for me, the word that I would come up with right away is nevertheless. Like today, nevertheless, he is mainly remembered for a code of laws. Nevertheless means like regardless of the things he did before, he is actually remembered for this. So something like that. It doesn't have to be an accurate synonym, just what comes to your mind right away, or even if you don't come up with a word, it could be a connotation. So here for me, that is the word I'm going to go in with. And A says therefore, no. B says likewise. C says however, which is very similar to nevertheless. D says for instance. So I'm going to go with C, however. And that makes sense because in this context, it's saying that although the Babylon king has achieved all of these things, today he's actually remembered for something else, which is the Code of Hammurabi. So however makes the most sense. So as you can see, I know I haven't been doing this for a lot of the questions, but I personally recommend first read the question. Don't look at the answers, but read the question. Then go into the paragraph that's given above. Then come up with your own answer and then move to the answer choices. That's the most accurate way of getting the correct answer, even if you're not sure how to move about the question. So I hope that made sense. And the answer choice is C, however. So now we're moving on to a different section of the video on how to maximize your points and different tips for the SAT. First thing to remember, guys, is always answer every question. The SAT, especially if you haven't taken it before, you might not know this, but there is no guessing penalty. So answer every question so you at least have a chance of getting to the right question. And when you answer a question, you don't want to guess it. You really want to eliminate as much as you can. And maybe you come down to like 2 options from 4, and then you can maybe guess from that. But I would say really narrow down as much as you can, because I think every question, even if you're not sure what the right answer is, it's definitely possible to eliminate answers. So it's very easy to come up with answers which you're sure are not the correct ones. So use your strategy. Scenario 2, you're trying to solve a question, but you can't immediately answer the question. So what would you guys do? So what would you do to ensure you don't make silly mistakes? You might want to pause the video and just think about it, and then you guys can come back. So some few ideas we have here is number 1, process of elimination. You can always, as I said, eliminate the wrong answer choices and rely on connotation. So do you think the answer choice has a positive connotation, a negative connotation, and maybe that can help you to improve your odds of guessing correctly. Always do your work on paper. So I personally don't think you need to do every question on paper like you would perhaps for the math section, but for the English, especially when you have long paragraphs or data analysis questions or something like that, it might be easier to write down, especially for main idea problems, what you understand from the text and really break it down into the simplest idea so you can retain everything. Because I often find when you read the paragraphs, it's very easy to forget at the end what they were even talking about. So this can really help you stay focused. Number 3 is prevent careless errors. Slow down. I know it's hard when you have a timer going, but that's why practice is key. Circle keywords. This is extremely important. Underline the question so you stay focused on what the question is asking. You don't deviate from that. And so you can, again, improve your odds of getting to the correct question. And always double check your work. Of course, that's only if you have time. But I think especially for the shorter questions, they're always easy to come back to and always easy to score more points. So definitely try that out. Okay, scenario 3 is you've got exactly 3 weeks until you take your SAT test. So what would you do normally to prioritize your studying? Like if you've taken this test before, what have you done? You might want to reflect on that. If not, just think, what would you do? Pause the video and then you guys can come back. So I personally don't think there's one thing that you guys really need to do, like one thing that's the correct answer here. Obviously, good sleep, good food, all of that is important. Resting is very important. But the things I have on here is practice makes perfect. Of course, you want to take practice tests. It's one of the most important SAT studying techniques. And when you take practice tests, you just don't want to simply take it just to see your level. You can do that, but it's always better to go over your mistakes and then really understand them so you can improve your score. Then I definitely recommend taking a full Blue Book test to review and to really see what's your current level so you can kind of predict what you might get in the SAT, and you can drill in on your weaknesses by analyzing your score, so you can see the subsection scores and things like that. But I also think you need to just start resting, and you also want to build up your focus for the SAT. So maybe you might want to start reading or start channeling your energy in a way that you can focus for a longer period of time. But that's not really applicable to everyone, but it depends on how often you get distracted and things like that. Personally, for me, I found that a few weeks, even just 1 day or 2 days before the SAT even, just like winding down and staying focused could really help you when you're sitting in that test center. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you'll come back to see the future lessons. We have around 5 or 6 more lessons coming up, and I hope you've learned something new from this section, whether it be maximizing your points, SAT test tips, practice questions, and yeah, I hope to see you guys soon. Thank you for coming to this video.